I've never done this before, like in this format, but I think it's really cool to have the opportunity due to this very unique situation to have other ways of sharing and getting together a lot of people that are in different places of the states and of the world to, I don't know, share things about not only Mezonte but all agave spirits and the situations around them. But yeah, we'll be focusing right now on these producers from Mezonte. I have a presentation, so I'll probably uh, quit my ugly face and share the presentation with you. So if you see, there you can see it, right? The, the Mezonte presentation. Are you able to see it, right? Perfect. Basically, what I'll be talking about a little bit is about Mezonte, how it works, and then to be a little bit more specific in certain producers that are the producers that are available in the States through Winebow. So first of all, well, Mezonte, as you might know, is an organization that works with producers all across Mexico, specifically with these states that you're seeing on your screen right now: Durango, Jalisco, Michoacán, Guerrero, Puebla, Oaxaca, Estado de México, Morelos sometimes, and people come and go very often. We work with around 17 different producers from different regions. And besides those, we work with several producers that sometimes just approach to us and ask us to make this batch through Mezonte label. And we're more than honored and glad to say yes, of course, as long as they are traditional producers. That's a very important thing to do. That's what we really care, is that these producers are really traditional mezcal producers, not only like into a trend or making right now mezcal because it's a commercial thing. It's because they've been doing this for generations and they are very aware of the biological and cultural aspects around the mezcal production. So as long as they are doing that, yeah, we always consider them as very potential producers for Mezonte. Then, well, specifically talking about Jalisco, is one of the states that we focus more. That Durango, Michoacán, Puebla, and Oaxaca, probably some of the Guerrero. And this is a very what I love about Jalisco, and you can see it in this map that it's all Jalisco, is that it has done kind of like a geographical indication through a very natural and organic process. It hasn't been done by any kind of regulatory system or even any kind of institution or anything. All of these names that you're seeing in the screen are from different agave spirits that are known as all of these names. For example, if you go way north, it's Tepe or Tuchi, done by native people from those regions. Tuchi is more between Jalisco and Durango, and Tepe is more in the border with Zacatecas, Durango, and Jalisco. Then if you go all the way south, you can find Tusca, or also called Vino de Mezcal. If you go to the coast, you'll find Raicilla, and as you're going to the center, you will find a lot of different names for it. Vino de Cerro, Vino de Lechuguilla, Vino de Olla, there are a lot of them. And in the center, well, that was the epicenter of tequila in its early times, when all the tequila was done in and around the area of the volcano of Tequila. That's where it took the name, the Vino Mezcal from tequila. And you can also find other spirits like the Barranca, that would be translated as risk. That's because producers from agave spirits from that area, since all of them were in a certain way like persecuted, they would find very hidden places to continue making this drink, not only because it was an economical resource, but also because it was a cultural aspect. So they weren't they didn't want for them to take that from them. So they continue to do these spirits in all regions that happen all across Mexico, not only in Jalisco, but that's one of the reasons that they call it Barranca, just to hide a little bit also by the name and physically the things that they were doing. Specifically talking about the spirits that we have available in the States, we will be talking about Tepe, Raicilla, and other producers from like Lorenzo, Tomas, Santos, and Cande that are from Southern Jalisco. Here in the center is Guadalajara, so you can have a reference of geographical reference of how far from the center they are. And you can see all these different terroirs that they are in. The first one, it's a very known producer that's called Japo. He's a raicilla producer. He is over 87 years old, and he's basically probably the most active and enthusiastic producer that I work with. He still goes out, like you see in that picture, with his machete, just going around his beautiful landscape of agaves and be harvesting them. Well, he's now just cleaning the fields because the doctor prohibited him to be harvesting or doing any very hard work. Actually, he broke his hand like 2 weeks ago. He fell from a donkey and he was like, oh, damn donkey. He was like going back from the fields to his house, and the donkey just went crazy and throw him down, but he's still like very active. And he was like, I'm just trying to get this cast off and probably be back to work. So he's very active. And one thing that I really love about these producers, and you'll see all these locations, is that they have a lot of biodiversity, very balanced ecosystems. And it's not like in a very intense or industrial ways, like in tequila, for example, or certain types of agaves for mezcal, like the espadín in certain areas, that there are just agaves, and there's no space for them. There's no other vegetation around it. And here you can see the fields where the raicilla mezcales, are, as they call it, the agaves, they grow. They are just like wildly and randomly growing there. Most of them are cultivated or semi-cultivated, I would say, because they use both by seed, they grow by seed and also by sprouts, like all of these offshoots, and they just replace them in a certain area where they think they're gonna be really healthy and they will have enough nutrition to grow. So as you can see, they're not like producing lines or anything, they're just like next to a tree, next to a rock, over an anthill, all these kinds of things. Here you can see there's a lot of grass, there's a lot of trees like that they also use for the mezcal production, like the tezcalama, the parota, the higuera. There are a lot of different types of trees that are growing there. Here, for example, another picture of it. Just beautiful agaves growing around. And that type of for example, this I love, of vegetation gives a lot of opportunity for a lot of things, specifically for this balanced ecosystem, like I was telling you. Not only it keeps it, for example, it has very different functions. For example, one is with this type of grass or small bushes, and obviously the trees, they keep a little bit of shade, and in this specific time of global warming, it cools down a little bit the earth. The agaves are less sensible, like for example, coffee or other species of plants, but it helps a lot to not to stress them as much as they could be in a very open type of fields. Also, the trees gives a lot of shade to the people that are working there, and not they need a shade to release a little bit of the heat every now and then by doing all of these very hard work of harvesting or taking care of the agaves. So it's very important. Trees are also home of birds that are plague controllers, so it's very important. And they're also home for a lot of different types of animals, like frogs, a lot of insects, bees, wasps, you name them. It's also a source of water because of the shape of the leaves. They accumulate water in the rain season and they keep it there, so it's always a place for a lot of insects and animals to have a beautiful place to go and eat, drink, and just stay there for a cool time. His landscapes are also very, sometimes people think that agaves only grow in desertic and very dry places. Well, this is a perfect example that it's not just like that. You can see the sea just from the mezcaleras from Japo, from one of the mezcaleras from Japo. And it's just there, the sea. So it's in a very low level, probably like 600 feet above sea level. And they're growing perfectly. You can find a lot of different types of trees, from coffee to papaya, noni, gondo, you name them. It's a very rich and fertile soil. This is the amarillo. It's one of the most used in the coast area. And they always have them capones, so they cut the quiote and leave it there for at least 6 months. So every time that you are drinking one of Japos, you're drinking between 7 to 13 years, depending on the way that they are growing in this type of very, very wild type of growing. So this is how they do it. Here you can see also like they have a very big stem. And they cook it too. It's not the root, and that might be the reason why they call it raicilla, because it comes from the root, or the root seems like, it would seem like a root going off the soil, but it's not. It's just a stem. It's kind of like, I wouldn't like to compare it, but just for people to have a reference, it would be like the Karwinskis, like the Picuiche and Madrecuiche, that are just like tree trunks. They're kind of similar in that sense. And the soil it's very, very nutrient in minerals. So you can see all of these, even like sparkling kind of, maybe like if people would go there like 200 years ago, they might be searching for gold or something like that, because there's a lot of reflection in the dirt. So it's very, very complex type of soil.
Pedro, someone asked if there's cattle grazing among the agaves there. I didn't see much when we were there,
okay.
But
yeah, there is. Actually, Japo has like 10 heads of cattle, and they use it also for cleaning the fields. That's another way of actually cleaning the fields in a very natural and organic, non-harmful way to the fields. Actually, that's a very good question. Because they don't use any kind of pesticides, insecticides, or anything like that. They just go and clean with the machetes, and they let the cattle in, and that's just the way that they work with the cattle. Yeah, let me know if someone else wants to.
Sure, yeah. I'm just trying
to. He lives in Calle Mezcalito number 6. And then this is his pit. It's very unique. It's more like a cylindrical type instead of the conical, the classic conical type of pit. And You can see here like the agaves and the stem, how big it is, and how deep is the pit, that they need a ladder to go down all the way. They cook with different types of oaks and sometimes with escalama, that would be a wild fig. And they then use this volcanic rock. And then, most of the producers would leave the agaves there for 3 to 7 days. Hapo is very specific and would go like no less than 5 days. But the last years, he has been experimenting. As I was saying, he's very like just like moving all the time. So he's always trying to experiment some more things, and he has left the agaves there for over up to 26 days. It's not that it's still cooking for that long, but the way that the agaves are gonna be when they take them out is gonna be very different than if they're really, really hot and then they expose it to a very cold or contrast type of temperature. So he leaves them to cool down all this time, and then with very, very small percent of oxygen that seals there, starts a micro or very small fermentation process. So that will also give another type of profile to this raicilla. After that, it's crushed with by hand with these wooden mallets in these wooden canoes. I see that Lou is asking, was there a reason Hapo tried this experiment? Because he's a crazy guy, Lou. He just likes to be experimenting and trying new things to see if something yields more or has a better effect on taste or what happens. I mean, he's the type of man that is always like trying to have the best mezcal and he doesn't really care about time. Well, he does care, but he's not hurried in that sense. He's like always trying to, well, if it takes 20 days to do this, we'll take 20 days to do it right. So that's the way of thinking of Hapo.
Pedro, there's a few other questions if you want to do them now or later. It's up to you.
Yeah, the added oxygenation come through. It might. I mean, it's just like a theory that we have. It's not a technical thing that he's trying to do that. He's just like thinking about how the mezcal could be better cooked, and he probably follows this thing about slow cooking. If you cook in any kind of thing, food or drinks in this case, we all know that slow cooking is better because the properties that you can get from that are going to be better quality. So this is how it works. This Nacho is this guy who's cutting the Mezonte. He only cuts this part of the agave because it's harder. It's just with this rock that is designed just for that. It has a particular shape for doing that. And then he throws it back to these wooden canoes, as they call it, or the cerros. And this is the way that they see how it works.
Pedro, one of the other questions was, why does he use such a cylindrical, like more like narrow, deep oven?
Yeah.
You know why he built it that way?
The way that he built it is just like very instinctively. It wasn't like a very kind of like technical thing. It's just like he needed more space to throw more mezcal, and he figured out how to make that work. So that's basically it. Here in this video that I just showed you, and I will play it again just for you to check all these details that are going on. On this first lane, there's these two guys crushing the agave by hand. Then there's this guy cutting the Mezonte with the machete. And back there, it's Japo's son, Saul, just picking up a little bit of Mezonte and eating it. And off the screen, off the frame, there's this drunk guy that is always there, just giving them some company, because that's what happens in any kind of distillery, is that it draws the attention of all the community, and they just start smelling the cooked agave and hearing all of these natural processes that they are doing, and they just gather in, and that's what mezcal is all about, all of these communal and gatherings and interactions. So let me play it one more time, and you can see it and hear it. Hear the rhythm too. There's that. This is just a little detail of how they are crushing the agave and how it should be shredded completely.
Pedro, there was another question on here that says, agree with the popularity of mezcal growing, and with all Japo's space, does he or the other producers you work with get pressure to farm differently?
Oh, that's a really good question, and especially right now, it's a thing I wanted to talk about, and maybe this is the time. At least, I mean, it's obviously that a lot of producers right now, I'm gonna switch into because I feel like strange not seeing people. Let me see if I can. Well, let's see. Take it back. Well, the thing is that right now there's a lot of commercial pressure for all of these agave spirits, but it depends on the brand and the people behind each project, how to deal with that. There are a lot of great projects, especially the ones that are like done by the producers themselves, like Don Mateo de la Sierra or Real Minero or all of these great projects. So they can decide how much they need to produce and how and when. But most of the mezcales that are out there are through intermediaries. And sometimes those intermediaries push the producers to make more mezcal just for having more product or merchandise available. In that case, it's always a hard thing to do because you're not only pressuring the producer, but the whole ecosystem. And that's why sometimes they end up harvesting whole hills and deforesting an entire mountain just to do that. Especially in this moment where we have a lot of things, a whole crisis, and that has hit especially like the hospitality industry, and a lot of mezcal that or all types of spirit that are just stopped because all bars and restaurants are closed right now. And then that would affect all of these producers that were pressured to produce more than they can or they would every year. In this sense, we're very relieved and not happy, obviously, but with that much of preoccupation, that we've never done that. We always adapt of whatever production they have, and always leave around 40% at least of what they're producing for that community, because we recognize that cultural and economical aspects of the community it's essential for this. If you just live without mezcal, you're not only living without mezcal to the whole community, but also with the possibility of interaction, of social interaction, and also for very local economy. Because even though these people in these communities are buying small amounts of liters of mezcal, and in most of the time in a cheaper price than we as foreigners should buy from them, they are the ones that have kept this tradition going for centuries. So in this moment, for example, in crisis, if these people that were doing that and then just stop selling to the community and stop having mezcal for the communities and selling everything for either a national market or a foreign market, now they are without work and with the same amount, without the same amount of income as they were. So it hits them a lot more. Because also there's a lot of people in the communities that aren't now buying their mezcales. I don't know if that kind of makes sense and you're kind of following me, because right now, if we were, like, for example, if we were asking them, instead of doing 200 liters, they say, oh, let's do 400 liters because we need to export that amount to the States or whatever. And now they were depending on the income of those 400 liters. Now they would be harmed too, as we in the hospitality industry are. But since they've been just being paid more for the same amount of mezcal that they are producing, then it's a less impact what they're dealing with than if they would expect to be if they were only producing for external purposes. So I don't even remember what the original question was. But yeah, I mean, we try not to pressure in a sense of commercial market purposes. We don't work with the demand, we work with the production. So it doesn't really matter if the market asks for more. If the producer can't produce more, we won't ask for them. That's why we work with different producers. So if there's no more of this type of mezcal from Japo or from Santos, from someone else, they will be from some other producer. So maybe that's how we work, and that's important of the format or the formula that we've developed. I don't know if the person that asked that, did I answer the question? Okay, so shall we continue?
Yeah, and it looks like you answered the question quite thoroughly, and I think that you brought up a really good point as far as that sort of national and international crisis that's happening right now in the on-premise, yeah. And how there are probably, a lot of folks on this webinar right now do work in distribution and sales. Mm-hmm. So that's something to think about with our producers, that a lot of people might have upped their production to accommodate a very heavily cocktail-driven mezcal culture, and that there are going to be ramifications. That's a very good point that you brought up. So thank you for that.
Perfect. So, just continuing, this is one of the neighbors of Japo, and she's picking up some parts of the agave, the cooked agave that is called manillas, and they use it they use it for making tamales de mezcal. So you can see that also gastronomy in food sense, it's also very, very important in this sense. So these guys would make these tamales de mezcal for fishermen that lives in the next town, and while they go out for fishing very early in the morning, they will take some tamales de mezcal for eating later on while they're working. So it's a whole network that they're dealing with. Then let me show you a little clip from a documentary called Mezcales de Occidente. It's a research that Patricia Colunga and Daniel Sizumbo made like in 2012, something like that. And this is a small clip of how the stills that they use work. It's basically the same mechanism. Probably a lot of you already know them. It's the Filipinian style of still, but let me show you how it works.
El destilador consiste en un tronco ahuecado, con un recipiente en la parte inferior, donde se hierve el jugo fermentado de agave. Los vapores de alcohol se producen a más baja temperatura que los de agua y suben libremente por el tronco hasta topar con el caso de cobre con agua en la parte superior, que hace las funciones de enfriador y al contacto se condensa. Las gotas se precipitan en una tabla de madera ajustada, a la que llaman cuchara, y que conduce el líquido ahora con mayor concentración alcohólica, fluyendo hacia el exterior y depositándose en un nuevo recipiente.
Well, I think you saw it. It's just like a hollow tree trunk, and on the bottom is a copper bowl, or sometimes it's clay, and they throw the ferment, or afterwards the first distillation. It evaporates earlier than water, and so it goes all the way through the tree trunk. It hits the cooler that is on top, that's a copper bowl too, with cold water running all the time. So it condenses and it drips into a wooden spoon that they call cuchara, and then it flows out through a funnel made out of agave leaves and into a new container. That's very easy and very empiric, but very effective way. I'm seeing some questions about here about what Mezonte means. Mezonte is a way of also calling mezcal, like the literal way of the word, that is the heart of the cooked agave. So mezcal or Mezonte is the name that in this region of Jalisco, it's how they call the heart of the cooked agave. So that's Mezonte. And then the name of the documentary is Mezcales de Occidente, it's called. And then, well, this is, for example, a picture of the stills of raicilla. So here you can see that they add another layer. So buried underneath this, it will be like the copper bowl. Then this that they call tapa, that's another layer of wood. It's from Tezcalama, it's another type of tree. And then it's a bonete. And so this is also adding flavors, not only for the type of wood that it's done with, but also because it's given a different height. So all of these little details through the production are making a lot of differences through the final taste of the mezcal. Well, this is just a little clip of how beautiful the raicilla starts to flow. Yes, Chad, this is, well, it's mud, and these all are sealed with mud and bagasse. So it's also a very unique type of flavor. And after that, after they're distilled, Japo keeps them in all these damajuanas, or glass containers, like 20 liters glass containers, in a beautiful cellar that he has. And that's the way he works. I mean, always that I do this type of presentations, I like to share the philosophy, the way of thinking of Japo, because I think it's unique, and I think it's the essence of mezcal. And it's that right now, for example, at his 87, he just planted around 2,000 plants. And a lot of people in their community are like, Japo, come on, you are not gonna have enough time to harvest those. Why do you even bother? I mean, there would take around at least 10 years to grow. Why bother? And he says always like, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's tradition, and it's a thing that we must do. And he always says like, well, the first agaves that I harvest to make my first raicilla, I didn't plant those, someone else planted for me. And so I should do the same thing for next generations. And it's a thing that I think more people should value and follow this type of ideology, because if we understand that, we understand the reason of why we have to give back not only to the earth, but to the people that are joining us in this whole process of creation. If we understand that and value that, we'll be on the right track of understanding the agave spirits. Is there any question about Japo, or should we follow to next producers? Probably. I love this guy too. Yeah. Well, let's continue to do this. And if you have any questions, we can do.
There was one, Pedro, that says, what is the average life of the wood stills?
Oh, probably, well, depends on how you treat them and take care of them, but it can last up to 3 years. So just by saying this, it remembered me, and I think it's also very important. Just like a lot of, well, not a lot of them, but several producers or projects like Sansecan, Real Minero, Chacolo, Santo Mateo de la Sierra. A lot of these producers are also concerned about not only reforesting agaves, but also the type of woods that they're using, the water, and these guys are also very into that. They're we just started a nursery, not only for the different species of agave, but also for the bonete, parota, tescalama, and other species of trees that they're also using for the process, either for firewood or for steels.
And then there was a question if he distills mostly Amarillo, and I know that's the case. Is there a percentage of other agaves he's growing that you know of?
Most of the whole region up there, it's all Amarillo. He also has Verde and Cenizo, but they take more time to grow and to harvest, and there are less and less specimens. So that's why also we started these nurseries to start growing them by seed and creating more population of those varieties and species.
Japo's children, do they work with him? Are they planning to continue his tradition?
Well, right now, just one is that it's Saul, the one that you saw on the video. Yep. It's following his tradition. We don't certainly know if he is going to follow that tradition, hopefully. Every time that I go there, I try to tuck him into it. But he seems doubtful. He doesn't really know if he will continue or not. Hopefully, I will convince him. But you never know. I mean, it all depends on each people. So let's hope for the best.
Just in the essence of time, I think we should keep going.
Yeah, I mean,
we're at the 2:42, and
when am I gonna release the cenizo on everything? Come down to Guadalajara and maybe you'll find some. So let's go to Lorenzo and Tomas. So if we go back to the map of Jalisco, so we were here in this area, the north coast of Jalisco, And then is Lorenzo, Santos, Cande, Tomas. They're all working here in south of Jalisco, just in the border with Colima, that a lot of studies point out to be the cradle of American distillation. So we don't know for sure, but at least the data is the most ancient confirmation of distillation over there. For example, in terms of the NOM for mezcales, if you're talking about ancestral, well, this is it, even if they don't distill in clay, right? So Lorenzo, this beautiful man, is, if you would search for the definition of gentleman in the dictionary in Mexico, this would be the guy. He's a great guy. He's a man of his word. He's a perfect and gentleman in all sense, and he's very hardworking guy. He's 84, so he's not very younger than. He's not much younger than Japo, and he's just the same. Probably he's even a little bit stronger because he still harvests agaves. Actually, his last batch of mezcales, he harvested all of the agaves by himself. He's an amazing guy. His days not ended unless he has visited his mezcaleras. He feels like pretty much like in a Zen moment every time that he's out there. And he's just like a very humble guy. His son, Tomas, next to these beautiful cenizos that they have, is just like very joyful people. They're always happy, they're always optimistic. And specifically talking about these guys, they have around 12 different varieties of agaves. Most of the species are either angustifolia or rhodacantha. And well, you can see a little bit of the landscape here. It's just agaves, pitayas, a lot of mesquites, guamuchil, different specimens too. Just like in Japo, they just like go on leaving all this vegetation to live among the agaves, or the agaves live among this vegetation. One of the beautiful things about these places is that they preserve this structure of agricultural structure that is called milpa, and this is a picture where you can see it right away. I mean, it's just like the agaves, and you can see here like dry corn stems, and then just before these guys got dry, there was also beans like climbing up to the corn, and also squash, chili. So it's a whole system of alimentation like that they live with, and that's why that's another example of how for them this type of crisis won't harm them that much, because they have always had something to eat from their own lands. They're growing their own things, what they're drinking, what they're eating, and that's the best way to go. Not only they have all these type of nutrients for them to eat, but also it's nutrients for the soil because they give back oxygen, they give back iron, so they keep also the soil very healthy. Just to know that this is a new variety of agave that Lorenzo just called it la motosierra. It will be like the chainsaw. And right here you can't really see, but if you go closer and see all these teeth on every penca, you will see why. I mean, it's just filled with a lot of thorns, like twisted thorns. So as he says, it's no way that he can harvest that without getting a scratch on his arms or legs. You can see also here like the beautiful way of preserving not only all the trees, but also leaving the the quiotes to grow and so reproduce by seed. They've been doing that for several years. So they're bringing back new generation of genetic information to their field, so they will be stronger and stronger every generation. They also, as I was telling you, they're also planting all these endemic trees like these, that the bonete, and they're using all the agaves like in ancient times for different purposes. If you see here, this is not a Christmas tree, it's a quiote, a Christmas quiote. And they're just like putting all of these things of like beautiful things to decor for decoration. These are 3 generations of active generations of producers. This is Lorenzo, his son Tomas, and his 2 children, Chuchin and Rodrigo, that they are all very active at the same time, working together in this beautiful and very isolated place. This is actually a picture that I took before they had a roof here for them to work. But it's been getting better and better. This is his typical pit that they've done. It's a picture of them just when they were taking out some new mezcal. You can see here the steam coming out from the agaves. They leave it there for around 4 to 5 days. Then this is the still. It's very similar of what we saw on the past one. It's just, this is a parota tree trunk, so it's a different type of tree. And beneath that is another tree trunk that would go like half the way that this is. You'll see a little picture. So it's the same principle, same way of producing mezcal that in the way of the raicilla. And this is when they're changing from the fermentation to the first distillation. So they have to take out the whole ferment while boiling, take out the bagasse, and then loading it with another batch. So I'm seeing some questions here. Were the funds used to protect the new seedings? Yes, we have reinvestment funds with these guys to specifically do that, taking care of the nursery and creating new projects or getting better their working places. So yeah, part of what you're paying in the bottle is funded to that. And what is done with the spent bagasse, some of it is thrown to the same agave fields and use, I don't know how it's called in English, but it cools down a little bit the temperature of the soil, and they grow other stuff there. They can also grow corn or squash. Some of them, because it's a lot of bagasse, even if it's a very small batch, there's a lot of bagasse to use. And some of them, they use it to put it in, above the dirt roads so it can be more solid. And some of them, now we're trying to work with these people that they're working with biotechnology, and they're making lamps, trays, different like sound panels and everything with bagasse, and also mushrooms. So it's very interesting. I might share it to you with in a while, a link or something. They are called Radial, and it's a beautiful project that just started 1 year ago. So we were like looking forward to work more with them. Well, What else can I say about this picture? Just beautiful mezcal with beautiful pearls in it. And I don't know if you have any questions about Santos and Tomas, because it's we can move to Santos. That's also a producer from Southern Jalisco.
Pedro, there was a question about the capacity of that still, of the hollowed log still. Like how much comes out of that in a single batch?
Well, batches always depend on how much agave they harvest. The average of mezcal that they will take from 1 ton of agave, talking about Japo, probably would be one of the ones that yields more. That I would say that it goes from 80 to 100 liters from 1 ton. But most of these producers go from 60 to 80 liters, and some even less. Depends on each batch. How most of the time the pit would hold up to 5 tons of agave, and that's it. Most of them. There are between 3 to 5 tons of agave that can fit into one pit. And the capacity of the stills will probably be an average of 150 to 200 liters. So they have to make a lot of processes, different steps, to make just one batch. And that's actually a good thing. That's what's called discontinuous distillation. And that gives them the opportunity to adjust in the most fine and specific way how they want their spirit. If there was something in this part of the batch that they wanted to improve, they can do it in the second part of the distillation of the same batch. So they can go like up to 4 different process of distillation for just one batch.
Cool.
Well, Santos, it's also from Southern Jalisco, will be like 20 minutes drive from where Lorenzo and Tomas are. So it's once again here in the Southern Jalisco. This is Santos in the middle of one of his mezcaleras. And as you can see, there's a whole ton of pitayas over there. If you've never seen this columnar cactus, it's such a beautiful thing. And they produce these beautiful fruits called pitayas. They're kind of like dragon fruits or prickly pears. But they have different varieties, different flavors, beautiful colors, and it's beautiful. Here's a picture of a road where how you can get to Santos, and in the middle of the places is this river that's called Rio Armeria. On this side, as you can see on the right side, it's a very, very dry type of soil, and on the left side, as you can see, is very, very green, very fertile type of soil. So he has mezcaleras in both sides. He distills in this side, but just next to a river. And that's a very particular type of location, because you are in the middle of very desertic and fertile territories. From this side, you have the volcanic rock from the Volcanes de Colima. And from this side, this is the natural biosphere reserve that's called Sierra de Manantlan. So this combination is just unique. That's why it has a very unique also type of profile because of the soils that are involved. Once again, you can see all these pitayas growing around among these agaves. And this is also a plant, this cactus is also pollinated by bats. So this is just like a great buffet for bats, just like among agaves and pitayas. Well, this is the paradise for bats. And you can see back here how there are a lot of caves. So some of them live there, some of them just travel just to get there. Remember that bats can travel up to 100 kilometers just one night just to get some food. So it's very easy to be near there and have a whole feast of beautiful food. These are other types of agaves that are called peña. This is another species that, oh damn it, I just forgot how it's called, but I'll tell you later. And they're just like growing from the rocks. they don't use that much of those, but sometimes they do. This is part of the family of Santos. This is Santos, Hilda, his wife, La China, Laura, and his grandsons, and a little goat that they used to ride. And then, well, it's all about family always. They're always like milking this cow and just having fun in the backyard of their house. This is Ricardo, that is Santos' son that just came back from the States because he migrated looking for a better way of living, and he just got back because his father was making more mezcal. We were working more with his father and making more money out of what they're doing without like making more production, just the same production, but just paid better. This is just like some examples of how they cut these beautiful agaves just to throw it into the pit. His pit is also kind of small. It only can hold up to 4 or 5 tons. And this is how they're loading the pit. They use mesquite most of the time for distilling. And they cover the agaves with either banana leaves or palm tree leaves too. Also, they use corn leaves. That's called rastrojo.
Pedro, the bigger or all the agaves in that photo, can you go over some of those? Do you know? Do you remember? Like some of these really huge ones?
Most of these are cimarron. The small ones are alineño. Well, here probably was just only those. But they also have, once again, in this area, they've been a lot of studies for different agaves, around up to 21 different varieties of agaves. So they're always like working with different varieties. Sometimes they have just one, sometimes they have a blend of 5, 6, 7, 3. It depends on what's ready to harvest always. So
and then if you guys can tell too, like just the geographic situation, Pedro, you're driving into their place on this dirt road and you first come upon this oven. Up above, if you guys see, it drops down onto that grassy area below. So much higher up, right? That's the higher part to keep away from the river, right?
Exactly.
And then as you drive past it, we'll get to the fermenters and the still.
Exactly. Then after that, this is where they crush the agave, just once again by hand, like in capos, sometimes with this type of metal mallets or sometimes with wooden mallets. And they crush it just directly to the rocks. And that's because they would just carry these bagasse and throw it into these pits that actually the fermentation tanks or vats. And as you can see, as Gino was telling you, here's a river on the horizon. And then if you see, there's a drop here. So it's beneath the level of the river. And that's because these fermentation vats were actually buried like this way. And it was done because it was caused because this landscape that happened in the late 50s, and they just dropped everything and moved actually the river a couple of feet and buried everything here. And they just like dig it up for around 20 years ago and started once again fermenting in these fermentation vats. If you see, they're just holes in the ground, and it's just compacted dirt with volcanic rock. You can see these black rocks. That's how it's called, Peñas de Piedra Negra. This is how it looks when it was empty. Well, it had a little water because it was rainy season when I took this picture. And this is how it looks when it's full. So it's just like that, and they just put a little either a tarp or just a fabric above it, just not for them to like an animal to drop in there or something like that. There are different sizes and depths in each bat. So there are around 11 different bats. They're continue digging and continue finding more of them. So some of them are like 3 feet high. Some of them are like 10 or 11 feet height. And it depends on the production is the ones that they will use for fermentation purposes. So it's always dependent. They don't use all of them at the same time.
And how old do the archaeologists think these pits are old? How old are they? Or have they estimated?
It's supposed to be like over 400 years. There's still a lot of research to do, a lot of investigation and molecular tests. But yeah, at least that's what they think. That's over 400 years. This is one of the steels of Santos. Is once again underneath this is a copper bowl, and on top is a parota hollow tree trunk. Once again, it's just like that, and starts just to drip in a beautiful way. Santos, he's always like trying to see the way that they work in that region in Toliman is beautiful because a lot of people just grow the agave. So they give a lot of work for different people if they are working with more production, with more batches, and they work in a very community teamwork. He and his family, like brothers, cousins, they help each other like to make these different productions, even though if they're not selling them or they're not them, theirs. It's just like a way of helping them, of working in community. So it's a beautiful thing to see how Santos and that whole region that might have probably like 50 producers, but only like 6 know how to do the whole process. And Santos, in my opinion, is the best of doing that. Not only in technical ways, but also in human and ecological ways. So if maybe we can move on to the next one. That'll be Jorge's. And once again, if you have any questions or you remember something to ask, just let us know at the end. We can just like do this kind of a Q&A or something. So Jorge, now we're moving to Michoacán, is the southern state from Jalisco. So Jalisco would be like where this letter is. And then we work with different producers in these whole districts, in like it's 3, 4, 5 different districts. But mostly the one that we're sending to the States is from Jorge Perez, and is over here. It's northeast of Michoacán, also like just east from Morelia, the capital. And it's from Rio de Parras, Queréndaro. This is Jorge Perez and his wife, Doña Josefina, Doña Jose. And in difference of the previous ones, especially with Lorenzo and Tomas and Santos, that they have a lot of different diversity of agaves. These guys only produce with this, that it's the Alto, it's the Maguey Alto, or agave naiquidens. That is a very unique type of agave for mostly 3 reasons. One, it's that it deals like half of a regular or an average agave. So if we were talking about a production of 80 liters in the other productions, this would deal between probably like 30 to 60 liters from 1 ton. So that's a very low yield. Another thing is that this agave can produce both mezcal or pulque. So that's a very important fact because in the fermentation process, it will have a lot to do. And the third one is that it has a lot of saponin. This is like this type of foamy characteristic, chemical characteristic that it's grown because of natural defense for the agaves. But it also makes a lot of foam while fermenting. This is another type of wild alto. Most of the altos are wild. And Jorge, if we were talking about experimenting, Jorge, for me, would be the prime alchemist. He's done with different types of things. One of them is just like, he has 2 different types of pits. Now he has 3. One is this, that it's like a brick oven. He has like this regular conical oven that it was like more a community oven. And now, due to these profits that he has done with selling his mezcal, both nationally and internationally, he has started to build another pit in his backyard. So that's a really great thing. He crushes the agave in these wooden canoes also, but these are very specific type of canoes because there are eucalyptus canoes. So a lot of this smell will continue to be on the final profile of this mezcal, and it's very, very fresh. So it's also very refreshing. Sometimes a lot of people think that if they do this instead of, for example, plastic, it will be way better to do it like this, or the plastic would be like very awful type of taste, but it's not true. I mean, it's just like the plastic, especially if you're working with this type of industrial alimentary plastic, they won't add or reduce any type of flavors to the final spirit. But in this case, when you're dealing with, like for example, with Santos, with very volcanic type of soil, or with this eucalyptus canoes, that would definitely add something to it. So this is a plus in these mezcales, and the other ones is just like, well, they're doing what they need to do, and that's it. So after crushing these agaves in these canoes, they are fermenting in these brick vats that are really, really deep, probably like what, like 12 feet tall?
You need a ladder.
Something like that.
You don't want to get caught down there.
It's
definitely a quarantine situation down there, I think.
Exactly. So they also need a ladder to go down there. And this is what we were talking about, the foamy characteristic of Alto. Look at all of that type of foam. It's very not only big, but also thick. So he has to spin that with a paddle, wooden paddle, just to lay it down and then cover it. It's just natural yeast. All of these are natural and endemic yeasts. They're all fermented naturally. That's why they take so long. And it will take like around 15 days to ferment. In the earlier cases I didn't tell you about, in Capos might go from 23 up to 40 days for fermentation. With Santos, it's a little faster. It can go from 15 to 21 days of fermentation. With Santos, with Lorenzo and Tomas, it's around an average of 20. So it's between 18 and 23 days. So it's just that all of these producers, the only things that they work with, it's agave and water, natural resources of water.
It's remarkable, but it also is like contextualized with their terroir, the climate, the heat. But so many other places only like what, 5-7 days fermentation?
Yeah. And especially from the ones that are inoculated with something like different types of yeast or adding sugar or anything like that, these guys are going all natural. So that's also, yes, once again, it's always about terroir. It's not only the soil that these agaves grow with, but as you can see, all of these tools that they're working with from the type of wood that they're using for firewood, the type of things that they're covering the agaves with in the pit, the things that they're using for crushing the agave, for fermenting the agave. Everything that is used there, like the water, like all of these are spring water, all of those are from that region. They're not working like, for example, in other spirits with like wine or whiskey or bourbon or anything like that, that they're choosing the type of wood and they're bringing it from France or everything like that, just to give a sense of profile. They're working with, these guys are working with the things that they have around and available. So if you are gonna talk about terroir, I probably would say that this is the best expression to do that. And the steel is, this is very similar to the ones in Jalisco, but this is probably like twice tall and big from those. This is an oyamel tree. You might know this type of tree because it's the one that attracts monarch butterflies to Michoacan, to this area of Michoacan. It's just that. Also, it's sealed with bagasse and mud, and it goes out through a funnel of carrizo, like a sugarcane stem. And oh, I love this because it's just like Jorge making the test of his mezcal, and look at his face when I tilt up, because I haven't seen a face like that of pride, very disguised. But it's just like, yeah, see that, Pedro? Okay. Look at that, they don't open. It's just amazing. It also has to do with the things that, oh, I forgot to tell you, when they're starting the fermentation process, they add some pulque to it. So that's the food of the start fermentation. They add around just like 6-10 liters of pulque, and then that's also a reason of all of these, either both foam and this type of
and the pulque is made in the Quirinx, in the Alto, same plant, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct. And after being distilled, he also, like all of these guys, just rest his mezcales in glass. It's never in wood or anything else. It's just like keeping it the flavors of the agave, and as much as you can leave them there, they evolve and they have a better clear taste and balanced taste. They get more rounded, they get more sharp, and the taste, it's only the taste that tastes in a little bit lower proof, but it's actually on the same proof, or maybe just 1 or 2% lower, as far as you can get in the resting in glass. So it could be there from 6 months up to 10 years. It depends on the producer. So they also, as I was telling you, they are very alchemists. This is a mezcal that it's aged with this rattlesnake. This is not for tasting purposes, it's just more for medicinal purposes. And once again, it's another use of mezcal. It's not only for selling, it's not only for drinking, it's also a medicine. Like you said, it is a food, like it is fuel, it is a construction tool, everything. So, and they also use a lot of herbs, since Doña Jose, his wife, knows a lot of uses for herbs in that region. They use different herbs for either distilling with those or infusing mezcal with those herbs for different purposes. If it's distilled with that in the second distillation process, it's for tasting purposes. But if they use it as an infusion after being distilled, is for medicinal purposes. I think that's about it with Jorge. I don't know. He's just like a very, very humble guy. He's like always like very willing, and he has a lot of stamina and likes a lot of action. I mean, there's a rumor there that he has played soccer with rocks, and he's just like kicking rocks just for fun and stuff like that. He's just like this crazy, beautiful guy who likes to make mezcal and experiment with a lot of things. So it's beautiful. So maybe we can move to Asiano and some tepe. So this is from Asiano. Asiano is a native community called Tepehuanos. It's in the border of Jalisco, Durango, and Zacatecas. And it's just in this area. Actually, it's most of the labels of tepe that we have. It's labeled like that. If you see the state where it's produced, you can see all of those three: Durango, Zacatecas, sometimes even Nayarit, and Jalisco. And it's because well, where they're distilling, it's just in the border of Durango and Jalisco. But where it's produced, where their agaves are grown, are mostly in border of Zacatecas and Durango, and the culture of the whole people are spread in all of this area. So it wouldn't be fair just to call it from one specific state. So that's why we label them as 3 different states. So this is the kind of landscape that they have over there. Different types of, it's a very kind of forest, very dry and rocky forest. It has, I was just there like 2 months ago or something like that, a month and a half ago. And I was with a GPS taking samples of some agaves, and the altitude there was between 6,000 and 7,200 feet high. So it's really, really high there. And they're beautiful, just growing different types of trees. And all of these agaves, that they work with, they have cenizo, they have castilla, and they have masparillo. All of them grow widely over there. Look at those beautiful specimens. It's just like paradise. You have to drive like from Guadalajara up there to 8.5 hours, and then take a 4x4, another like probably 50 minutes, so to an hour, and then walk an hour and a half to get to Asiano's place, and then walk another half an hour downhill to get to his vinata, where he produces these beautiful tepe.
We always kind of gloss over how much driving you do, Pedro. We talk about how long the agaves have to grow, how long the agaves have to cook, how long they ferment for, how many days it takes to distill them, how long they rest in glass. But just to get to Hapo's place, all in from Guadalajara, what, 6.5 hours?
More, like
more.
7.5 hours.
Yeah, and then that's just one way.
Yeah.
And now you're talking Tepe's 8. Getting to Rio de Paras is like what, 3.5, 4?
Yeah, like 4.5.
Yeah. One way. It's a lot of driving.
I don't do that math because probably I would stop doing it. But yeah, it's a lot of driving. It has cost me a lot of therapeutical sessions, like massages or something like that.
I also haven't seen your Mezonte in a while. Your mouth must be dry.
Yeah. So, well, these are beautiful types of agaves. This is the cenizo. All of these agaves also take between 8 to 13 years to grow. It depends on the conditions that they're growing in. So that's why it has like this big difference between 8 to 13 years. And you can see they don't give out offshoots. They only reproduce by seed. So this is a picture of a quiote right there. It's like very high. And how they, well, one thing to say that probably this is the first time that I'm showing these pictures online. I only did this in this last time that I was in LA, just like how much was it? Like 3 months ago?
That was, gosh, February you were here, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, February.
That was because this indigenous group that is very close, very reserved, and they don't like having their picture taken. And just until this last year, after like around 7 years, they let me take some pictures and they let me show them. So I actually kind of feel weird just showing these pictures because it's just like not betraying them, but because they give me the permission. But it feels weird after all those time that they didn't let me take pictures. So now that I can show them, it's really fun and really joyful. So this is the Vinata from Siano. This is a beautiful paradise next to our little river. And this is how they cover the agave. This is the pit, and how they cover the agave. It's just with this type of grass. They call it Zacate del Monte. This is the grass that they cover with. And this is how they're just taking the agaves out from it, from the pit. And the thing is that they don't crush the agave, they just chop above this wooden, how you call it, like this.
Planks of wood?
Sorry?
Plank of wood, yeah. So
Yeah.
the planks of wood are covering a hole in the ground that lined with more planks of wood, right?
Exactly. And under these, where they are crushing the, or crushing the agave or chopping the agave, is the fermentation vat. Over here, down here.
How many do they have?
Sorry?
How many fermentation vats do they have?
There are 3.
3. That's what you could see in the one photo was 3.
In this one, they have 1, 2, and over there they have another one. Also, they have 4 because over here, like off screen, they have another one. And this is how they do it.
Que no suframos hambre.
So they're also keeping some of that mezonte, they also call it mezonte, to eat on their way back to their homes. It's an interesting fact that it takes a lot to get there, just like by walking or moving. What they do is just to stay there for a whole month. They have like a little camp, like 30 minutes from there, 30 minutes walk from there. And you just walk there, sleep, eat, and go back to work. So it's just like a retirement camp, what they do. And they do have like this thing about this kind of ritual like structure where they don't do anything else while doing tepe. They only focus on doing tepe while they're doing tepe. They don't think about anything else. They don't do anything else. It's actually, there's a belief that if you do something else, the tepe won't yield the same. So they're really focused and very energetic about their rules of doing tepe. This is the fermentation vat that is underground. So as you can see, it's only wood. And beneath that, they were chopping the agave on top of this. So they just open these pallets and they open it and they just let it drop. They have spring water, so they do that. The fermentation with spring water, it takes around 15 days to do it. And then it's still with this, it's very similar on first sight, like the ones that we've seen before, but this is kind of like a hybrid because here beneath this is the copper bowl, then this is the hollow tree trunk, but as you can see on the top, there is no condenser. So what they do is they have this hole where they put part of a quiote and then a copper tube that it's called culebra, and it's immersed in this cold water bath or tank. It's just doing the condensation and external condensation. It's not like the Arabic type of steel, but it's kind of similar because it's an external condensation, but it's very direct condensation. It's not like with these serpentines like the other ones. So it's very, very unique type of condensation process. And after that, it's just, once again, just aged in glass and keep it there for most of the time. They have ritual purposes. They have also like recreational purposes. And some people from different communities, they do it with different purposes for specific festivities, like the Judea, that will be like kind of like the Easter. But they do different stuff with that. It's just like for getting into characters, because they do like this representation of the crucifixion of Christ, but there's no Christ, there's no crucifixion. So it's really interesting. Actually, the church doesn't recognize that as a religious festivity. So it's their own thing. It's their own syncretism that they're doing. And this is Asiano, just looking at the Sierra from his distillation process, distillation site. And this is just one beautiful cenizo ready to bloom and give a beautiful quiote. That's it. I don't know if you have...
There was a couple of questions. One was, how often do you visit each producer?
Okay, well, they're not mine. I didn't buy them. But yeah, I visit all of these producers that are like our partners, depending on the season, but usually at least once a month or once 2 months, depending on the production and my possibilities of traveling, because I do have a lot of work in different things. So and 2 children, so I have to take care of them too. Yeah, sometimes I go to visit certain producers even 2 or 3 times a month. Some of them I just go once every 2 months or something like that, depending on the season. So yeah, it depends on that.
We talked a lot about how cenizo gets used. The word gets used a lot, and someone asked what the biological name of it is. And I know we've talked, if you want to touch on that.
Well, there's been a lot of controversy because one, at least the one that's called Masparillo, it was thought to be a Bovicornuta, but last time that there was a whole group of the university from Tucson that was here in Jalisco, showed them some pictures, and even if some biologists from Mexico were on those areas, not precisely where I was bringing the tepe from, and they were telling me that it was a bovicornuta, but these guys told me like, well, I don't think that is a bovicornuta. So it's a whole debate going on. And so that's why this last time that I went there, I took some samples of all of them and bring it to the university to get analyzed, DNA analyzed. And probably like in a month, we will know specifically and certainly what species of agave it is. But even though I think that what's most important about it is not the type of species that it is, but how they call it there, because that's the main thing of identity. And identity is what mezcal is. It's mezcal is the identity of a community, of a family, of a single man or woman that is making this spirit. And if you call these agaves as they call them, then you'll have the right name or the right characteristic for this agave. So if they call it cenizo, well, it's a cenizo. It doesn't matter if it's a Duranguensis, it's an Americana, it's a Rodacanta or whatever. It's a cenizo for the Tepehuanos, so it's a cenizo for us. That would be what I think that we should take care of.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I think a lot of us growing up, if we're all in the United States, we're so connected, and especially when you live in a larger city, you're always around people, and a lot of these communities are so remote that I think it makes perfect sense to think of it that way. I mean, when you visit Eduardo or Lalo, you know, he calls something a specific thing, and he's very adamant that it's that, and he's not wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
But that doesn't mean someone calling it something different that's similar. But the scientists and a lot of us want us to like find that exact thing, and I think that's kind of one of the beautiful parts about mezcal.
I think it's great to have this whole information and to just like to put it into this record. But at the end of the day, I mean, talk about, let's say, for example, an angustifolia, and people, if you try to put that into a labeling a profile of taste to a mezcal, that would be completely wrong. I mean, if you taste an angustifolia, not say an angustifolia from Durango, from Sonora, from Jalisco, from Michoacán, from Puebla, from Oaxaca, that would be just like insane. But just even the single variety of espadín or a single variety of whichever agave you will pick, it will be different from producer to producer. So it wouldn't really matter. So it doesn't really matter in terms of profiles of flavors or profiles of identity of cultural identity for these producers. It will be just like a very taxonomic type of classification. It will be just a label for that. But it wouldn't, you wouldn't be able to say, oh, if it's a Rodacanta, it should taste like this. No, that would be completely wrong. And I can prove that just like sipping 6 different mezcales from the same species. So it doesn't really matter that. It's just like for a biological type of view, okay, let's do that. But in terms of profile of flavors, it just doesn't really matter. Exactly. It's just like it's sandwiches in New York. I love that. I would use that for a reference. Totally agree, Michael.
There was another question on how they keep the water cold, how Asiano keeps the water cold.
It's already cold. I mean, it's just like, well, they keep changing it. It's just like, they have like it's not a pump because the river is just like right there. So it's just like they flow through a hose, the water to to this wooden tank, and it goes out again. They used to do it just like by changing the water with buckets, just changing it like every now and then to keep it cold.
Anybody else have any questions they want to ask?
And yeah.
So yeah, just in case a lot of you don't know, Pedro also is a partner in a few different restaurants, bars in Guadalajara. So if you go to Guadalajara, definitely look him up. You can go to the Mezonte tasting room. You can go to the dance party at Pare du Sufrir and drink lots of mezcal. And you can go to his wonderful restaurant De La O and drink cocktails and have food. And then there's also La Trompada and possibly your next new venture on the corner there, just taking over that whole street whenever this thing comes to. So yeah, all those things are going on there whenever we can travel again freely. See if there's anything else on here. Yeah, that's about it. Hopefully in the US we'll get a couple more selections from Mezonte. What do we have? Teodoro from Oaxaca.
And Cande from Southern Jalisco.
And Cande from Southern Jalisco. Was that it? Those are the two?
Yeah, from Teodoro, it's from Yahuatlan. It's a beautiful blend of Espadina, Micuiche, and it's an amazing thing because I've already forgotten how a true Karwinski tasted like until I tasted that, and it was just like, it blew my mind. And from Cande, it's a delicious Extero Amarillo that is one of the most endemic, if not the most endemic agave from Southern Jalisco, from that region. It's a Rodacanta. It takes around 15 years to grow. And after being capado, like they cut the quiote, they left it there for another 2 years. So it was rested in fields, as they call it. So it's a 17-year-old agave. It's beautiful. And probably was like the same thing that I tried like the first time when I was there in Zapotitlan de Vadillo. And it reminded me to that. So it was great to taste something that beautiful.
Capone just means when you've cut the Quixote and then you let the agave rest still in the ground and the sugars multiply, right? Fermentable sugars. Someone asked if the foaming in Alto at Jorge's is similar to fermentation of Jabalí. And yeah, it's the saponin.
It's kind of similar. It has a lot of saponin, so yeah, similar to that.
And yeah, the Capone concentrates the sugar. Yep.
Exactly. What's the purpose of Capone?
Someone put, what's the benefit or purpose of Capone?
Well, it concentrates and it refines the. Well, in that case, it's not sugars yet, but it's the fructanes, maybe?
Fructose. Yep.
Fructose inside the head of the agave. So it's not, it's more refined, it's more processed, like naturally processed. So that would benefit both in the cooking and after that in the fermentation process. So it would give better yield and also a better taste. It will have like more complexity to it. So that's a beautiful thing. They have, if you are available to get one of the first batches that we sent to the States through Lorenzo and Tomas, they were Capone for 5 years. So that's just insane. It was probably is the limit of having a Capone before it goes to decompose or something like that. But this was just like in the perfect moment to be distilled, and it was just an amazing taste.
Yeah. Someone else has asked a couple times if there's a tradition of making pechugas for celebrations, or infusion for medicinal purposes for any of them? I mean, obviously Jorge does a lot of different things in Michoacan.
Yeah. Jorge probably would be the one that makes more different types of pechugas. Emilio and Doña Delia and his mom from Don Mateo de la Sierra, they do this amazing pechuga, but it's just a single recipe of pechuga. Jorge makes tons of different types of pechugas and distilled with different types of herbs. He has done pechugas from turkey, from chicken, from possum, from rattlesnake, from, I don't know, you name it. He's just like insane. And he has done with different types of herbs and fruits like guava, like Quitamo Real, lima, naranja, like orange. It's just insane. Lemongrass, everything. And in other places in Michoacan, well, Michoacan is not a very solid tradition that they do pechugas. Neither Jalisco nor Durango. In other places like in Oaxaca or Guerrero, it's more common, or Puebla. But they have been developing, especially Jorge, all these types of pechugas that are just like insanely great. They have done one with coyote, and it's also beautiful. So yeah, it's also great.
Yeah, that batch of coyote pechuga that he then rested in fresh coyote meat afterwards was pretty wild. That I had at Jorge's. So yeah, next Friday we're gonna do David Suro talking about the Ancestral, Siembra Valles Ancestral, how that came about, and the production methods involved in that, and those two families. So you're all welcome to join us for that as well. If you guys don't have any other questions, we will. Oh, there was one other one, but I'm not really sure I understand it. From Gordon, talk about the bagasse products and
from Radial. Let me just search for that. It's an amazing group of young people just trying to do biotechnology. I'm just searching for that. Let me see if I found them. Yeah, I have found the link. I'll paste it here. It's a Facebook link. But they're doing like all of these things from ashtrays to lamps to different stuff, and we're working with them in different ways. We've just bought some of the lamps for this new spot on the corner, and it's beautiful because they're actually, when we ask for these lamps, they told us, okay, we will deliver them in a month because we have to grow them. So it's actually they use this bagasse, and then they inoculate this type of mushroom, so it gives a lot of texture and consistency, and then they just kind of cook them, and it's just amazing what they do. So we're working with them, and we're working now to also be connected with Cascawin. So they will be donating their bagasse to Radial to make more things. And a lot of the producers that we work with probably would be involved too. So we're just like dealing with these logistics of how to get this bagasse to Guadalajara. So yeah, it's a beautiful project. And I don't know, I mean, if there aren't any more questions, and if there are, it doesn't matter. I really want just to thank you all for being and standing me for I don't know how many times, but it was amazing to do this and to have like this interaction with all of you people. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Pedro.
Yes, thank you so much. And from a housekeeping standpoint, I did post the link to our Eventbrite if you want to keep up with the events that we're doing. Yeah, we're going to be bringing a lot of, yeah, we're going to be bringing in a lot of producers over the span of this, this quarantine, bringing in a lot of people, be an ongoing, really cool opportunity. Like this has been for me extraordinary. Pedro, thank you so much. It's so cool. I learned so much. I'm excited to talk to David next week. Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. What an exceptional opportunity. So like go to the Eventbrite if you want, and you can keep following kind of what we're posting along. I also posted a survey that provides us with feedback so that we can make these events and trainings more streamlined, more efficient, clearer, more digestible for people tuning in so that we can get the most out of the time that we have. So if all y'all, thank you. I cut my own hair myself. Thank you so much. But if you all, if you all could fill that out, that gives us a lot of really great feedback to make these better and more worthwhile for your time, our suppliers and producers' time, so we can all keep up on things as we're stuck in our homes. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Stay safe and spread the word about Mezonte.
100%. Cool.
Thanks again, Pedro. Thank you guys all for tuning in. Have a good weekend.
All right, I'm going to end the meeting in 5, 4, 3.